We're installing the UATV-tech clutch mod, which locks the inner and outer primary 100% together. We're going to do an install and service the one way. I got all the tools laying here. You'll need the service kit and of course the clutch mod, big screwdriver, 1/2 inch drive long ratchet, 3/8 ratchet with a 13mm socket. You're going to need the primary puller bolt, the secondary spreader bolt. This is just a piece of 1/2 inch round stock, probably got it Lowe's somewhere along the way, and a 10mm. Mine's already got the heavy duty Maverick bolt in it, and it uses a 10mm Allen wrench. The original bolt for the Commander uses 7/8 socket. I don't know what metric size the 7/8 is, because I don't have any metric sizes that big. You will need a torque wrench. If you've got a large pry bar, you can use a large pry bar instead of using the piece of round stock, which you'll see what I use it for here shortly. So the first thing we want to do, let me move these out of the way. First thing we want to do is spread the secondary so we can get the belt off. And that's where the 13mm and the 3/8 ratchet comes into play. Go ahead and screw that in about as far as you can get it. Don't over tighten it, and it'll make it easier getting the belt on and off. You can either roll the belt off by hand, or you can go ahead and take the outer half of the primary off. We're just going to go ahead and roll it off now. Get it out of the way. Now to foul this, to break the bolt loose, I'm going to use the round stock. Just stick it in the fins on the clutch. And that'll foul it against the floor. Once you get the bolt loose, kind of keeps them in pressure because it is spring loaded. Pull your bolt off, and that'll just normally pop right off. Sometimes you gotta smack it a couple times by hand. Now we're going to take and pull the one-way bearing off. It's got 2 springs with cups on the ends of them, so you want to keep a rag wrapped around them because they are spring loaded, and when it comes off they will fly out. I don't know if you could hear it, but I just heard them pop loose. And we just did what we weren't supposed to do. Right there's the springs and the cups. They're really small. One of them dropped through the floor. Yep, there's the spring there. The cup dropped through the floor, so we'll get it in a minute. As for when you take that off, I had that rag around to the bottom when you do it, make sure that the opening on the rag's at the top. That way when you open the rag out, they don't fall out. Now we're going to pull the primary off, the inner primary. Use the big puller bolt for that. We'll take and use a shirt on this secondary. The 1/2 inch stock won't fit, which is the reason why I have the screwdriver. The puller bolt takes a 7/8 too. Actually, I was wrong. The factory bolt takes a 19 millimeter. Takes a 19 millimeter socket to take the factory bolt out. The puller bolt uses a 7/8 to put it back in. Pull the inner off. And when it comes loose, it comes loose. Go ahead and take your puller bolt back out. Put it back in a safe spot. Never know when you're going to need it again. Hopefully not anytime soon. Now what we're going to do on the one way, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little wire sticking out right here. You're going to pull that wire out. And then you're going to remove these bearings. These here are not, these are the factory bearings. And if you look in there real close, which I can't see if you can see it, they'll come out of there. Let me get the wire loose. These bearings are only sealed on one side, so needless to say, it doesn't take very long for them to get stiff. This one here is extremely stiff to turn because it's got rust and grit and everything else in it, and it's all but dry on grease. Now this centerpiece, looks like it's pressed in. This is the first time I've had one way out. So it's a learning experience for me too. But after you get your bearings popped out and your new ones put back in, get everything cleaned up real good. Put everything back together. And then we'll take them, this is the locked inner. We'll set that up on there, and just to keep it from falling off, I'm going to screw this bolt back in there in case I bump it and it falls. If you want to put a light coating of grease on the shaft, then this is your bearing with all the new parts in it. You can see there's just a good film of grease inside. These are a double sealed bearing, so you don't have to worry about them drying up like you did the factory bearing. Everything's back together. We've got our spring cups and our springs back. We're going to start this on here. Actually, I'm going to pop that off and turn it just a little bit. If you turn it to the side, it'll help hold those in place. You start shoving the one way back on and find your holes in the side. Push one in. Then find the hole on the other side. And I just lost it. Once you get them shoved all the way in, then you can ease that thing back. And it should turn freely to the rear. And it'll actually, that's your engine brake kicking in right there. Whenever the engine goes into idle, if you're letting off the fuel, that bearing pushes over and locks the crank to the clutch and stops the belt from letting go. If you take those two plugs out, you will no longer have an engine brake. It'll immediately go straight into free spin whenever you let off the fuel. Now we've got that on there. Clean the muck off of it. Make sure it's good and clean. Don't want to get no grease on the belt when you put it back together. Screw that bolt out, put our washers back on it. There's a shim plate, a heavy washer. The shim plate goes on. The kit that comes from UATV-tech has a new spring washer too. Just put them on in that order. We're going to put our spring, which I have lost. There it is. This spring cup, you can see when it comes out, you don't want to put this in backwards. It has been done. Put your spring back in, slide it up over the shaft. When you put the outer on, get everything lined up. It is spring loaded, so you'll have to put some pressure on it. You spin it around till it locks. Then once it locks, you put your bolt back in. Make sure it stays all the way in until you get it drawed up. Then you can take your 10mm, get it good and snug. We're going to take our torque wrench and set it to 100 pounds. Of course, we're going to have our nice little round stock to file it again. They make a tool for locking this thing up to take it off and put it on, but it's not cheap. Now that that's good and tight, take your bar back off. Roll your belt back on. And take your spreader bolt back out. Once the belt's in there, all you got to do is move it a little bit and it'll clamp against the belt, and you can use your hand to take the spreader bolt back out. And then just back your clutch up. As you back it up, you can hear the one-way clicking. It's going the right direction. And then that'll bring your belt back up to the top. The bearing will not allow you to move it forward, but it will allow you to roll it backwards. At that point, we're pretty much done with the install. Let's see what happens. Well, that's a lot quieter than it was. So obviously the grease in the one-way bearing has took care of most of the noise. It's fairly normal for it to turn the secondary when you first start it up. After it gets warm, you see it run about 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then it shut off. Then it was just sitting there free spinning without any pressure against the secondary. So that should be it.